Have you ever felt like you're just invisible? Like the entire world has turned its back on you? I know that feeling all too well, but it didn't come from a failed relationship or losing a job. No, this feeling came from 4 paws, a wet nose, and a pair of eyes holding more pain than any I'd ever seen. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day where the rain comes down sideways like it's angry at the pavement. I was driving home from a late shift, windows fogged, the radio silent. It was just me and the steady hum of tires on wet asphalt. And that's when I saw him. He was huddled under a busted-up bus stop bench, shivering so hard it looked like his bones were trying to escape his skin. A dog. But not just any dog. This was a scrawny, mud-caked mutt with ribs you could count from 10 feet away. One ear was torn, the other flopped over as if it had given up all hope. And his eyes... Man, his eyes. They weren't begging for help. They were just watching, as if he'd already accepted that no one was ever coming for him. I slowed the truck down without even thinking, pulled over, stepped out into the downpour, and crouched low. I didn't say a word. I just held out my hand, palm down, the way my grandpa taught me. He flinched, of course. Who could blame him? But then he sniffed my hand, slowly, cautiously, as if he was trying to figure out if kindness was some kind of trick. And then he leaned in. Just an inch, but it was enough. I wrapped him in my jacket, which probably smelled like old coffee and diesel, and carried him to the truck like he was made of glass. He didn't struggle. He didn't even whine. He just curled into a tight ball on the passenger seat, trembling, his eyes wide as if he was waiting for a trap to spring shut at any second. The next morning at the vet, they told me things that made my stomach drop. Malnourished, dehydrated, and scars. Old, deep scars, like he'd been tied up too tight for far too long. They found a microchip, but it was registered to an address 3 states away. The owner never called them back, never reported him missing, just tossed him out like yesterday's trash. I named him Scout, not because he was brave, though I'd soon find out he was, but because he seemed like he'd been searching his whole life, searching for safety, for someone to finally see him, for a reason to keep breathing. The first week, he barely moved. He made a little den for himself under my bed, like it was a bunker. He wouldn't eat unless I sat right there on the floor with him, my hand resting on the bowl. But then, little things started to change. One morning, I woke up to a cold nose nudging my cheek. Another night, during a thunderstorm that shook the entire house, he crawled onto the couch for the very first time and pressed his whole body against my leg, like I was his anchor in the storm. And then came the day that changed everything. I was hiking up near Black Ridge, just me, Scout, and the kind of deep silence that makes your thoughts echo. We were about halfway up the trail when I slipped. It wasn't a little stumble. It was a full-on, leg-twisting, bone-snapping fall down a rocky slope. I hit my head hard on the way down, and everything went fuzzy. The next thing I remember, I was flat on my back, my legs screaming in pain, the sky spinning above me. I couldn't move. I couldn't call for help. My phone had been smashed to pieces in the fall. Panic set in fast. That cold, clawing fear that grabs you by the throat. I was alone. Truly, utterly alone. But Scout didn't panic. He started barking. This wasn't the scared little yip I'd heard from him before. This was a deep, urgent, commanding bark. He ran in frantic circles around me, then bolted up the trail and out of sight. For a second, my heart sank. I thought, great, even he's leaving me. But about 10 minutes later, I heard him again. He came tearing back down the trail, leading 2 hikers straight to me. He wouldn't stop barking until they saw me lying there. At first, he wouldn't let them get close. He stood between me and them like a furry, snarling guardian, until I managed to whisper, "It's okay, boy. They're good." They called 911 and got me out of there. One of the paramedics later told me that if Scout hadn't found those hikers exactly when he did, well, they didn't have to finish the sentence. I knew what they meant. Lying in that hospital bed, my leg in a cast, I kept thinking about him. This dog, this broken, thrown-away soul, had saved my life. After everything he had been through, after all the reasons he had to never trust a human again, he chose to trust. He chose to stay. He chose to fight for me when I couldn't fight for myself. People always say that pets give us unconditional love. But I think it's so much more than that. They give us a second chance, a chance to be better, to care more deeply, to remember that even the most damaged, shattered hearts can heal. If someone is just willing to stop, sit in the rain with them, and hold out a hand. Scout doesn't sleep under the bed anymore. He sleeps right beside me now, his head on the pillow next to mine. And every single morning, when he licks my hand like it's the most natural thing in the world, I remember, sometimes the ones the world throws away are the very ones who end up saving us. So, if you see a stray animal, cold and alone, please, don't just look away. Don't assume someone else will step in, because that dog, that cat, they aren't just lost. They're waiting. They might be waiting for you. And trust me, you might just need them even more than they need you. Thanks for listening to our story. If it touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more. We'll see you next time.